Hey, what's up? It's Joe. Welcome to my 5 Minute Friday for October 4th. So, just hanging out in my hotel right now in Auckland, New Zealand. It's a really nice hotel. It's actually kind of funny. I ran into Jason Momoa this morning at the gym while I was lifting, so that should give you an idea of the kind of place I'm staying at. So, a lot of really random celebrities. Saw a rapper last night walk in, throw his Bentley keys to the valet, then proceed to walk alone to his room carrying a big bag of McDonald's. So anyway, this place is definitely a trip. You always stay at some pretty interesting spots, and this is where I happen to be staying on my final leg of the 3 week trip. So anyway, to recap, I thought I'd kind of go through some field notes of what I'm seeing and hearing right now. So yeah, where to begin? I feels like generative AI is it's not where it was last year. Last year was more about I think imagining the use cases for generative AI. This year's all about figuring out how it's going to work, probably on POCs, maybe production if you're getting any success with the POCs. But now is the time to be testing it out. It seems like a lot of companies are doing that. We'll see what happens. Right now, the scuttlebutt I'm hearing from vendors and companies is that there's maybe a handful of production use cases with generative AI. This includes large language models, diffusion models, and so forth. So we'll see. I think there's obviously a lot of hype. You need to distinguish this too between, I would say, like people using, generative AI in the form of a chatbot. That's maybe some use case, but when you start integrating your data, that's a bit of a different story. So again, it remains to be seen what happens, but that seems to be where it is now. Again, talking to some of the biggest vendors around, and again, the scuttlebutt is that there's a lot of companies pushing generative AI, but the use cases so far are few and far between. But we'll see. Last year was again sort of the year of imagination. This year is sort of the year of fucking around and finding out, as I said in a prior podcast a while ago. So we'll find out. On that note, too, it feels like AI is very much conflated with generative AI, deep learning, and classical machine learning. So I think it's very confusing. And when you hear people talk about AI, it could mean any number of things. I would urge you when you're in conversations about AI to really clarify what people mean when they say AI. I think there's a lot of AI washing out there. I think there's also a lot of cynicism right now, some questions about the utility of generative AI and the latest, I guess, iteration, which are agents. I've seen some pretty cool stuff with agents, so I'm not going to write it off. I think it's actually pretty cool, but like a lot of the stuff, it's still super early days. I would say, if you're to compare where generative AI is today to where it could be, I would say it's like comparing, CompuServe or AOL to what the internet and mobile phones are today. I would say if you're completely writing the stuff off, I would consider you probably, I don't know, a bit special, if you know what I mean. But everyone likes to take, positions on stuff, including extreme positions on either side. But it is what it is. That's how it goes in bubbles. I heard people write off the internet too, and it's probably a stupid thing to do, but people will do what they're gonna do, and but I think the cynicism or maybe the jadedness around AI is, I think, rightfully placed, and there's a lot of hype, and I think people just want to see some success stories around it. So let's see how it goes. Show us the money, as the old saying goes. A lot of conversation about OpenAI. That's an interesting one. I think the executive departures and getting the massive investment they did, including from SoftBank of all firms, leads to some pretty interesting takes in the company. I was chatting with one executive who's somebody I really, really respect, and we kind of felt that it feels like OpenAI might be a bit like WeWork, so we'll see like a lot of money thrown into it, a lot of promise, but then kind of dig under the hood and yeah, it's going through some growing pains. So we'll see if they can live up to the $150 billion valuation they have now. So on a practical matter too, it's interesting. Like talking to practitioners, executives. Again, I traveled to the UK, Australia, New Zealand, and overwhelmingly, it feels like, at least in these places, there's a bit of a malaise. It's I think it's different than America, where we're all just so gung ho about going out there and killing it, and everyone has if anyone has an idea for a business, or people tend to be very supportive. I notice in these areas, there's definitely a lot less enthusiasm for new ideas, rocking the boat, risk taking, and so forth. So it's interesting. I can tell if the malaise is really the result of actual malaise or people just feeling a bit more down on themselves than they normally do, which is kind of a joke in the sense where everyone's just sort of down in their position. But there's some truth to it too. But yeah, I would say like uh, the ecosystem here, the economies are just flatlined, in the UK and Australia and New Zealand, and so we'll see what happens. But it's tough. It's not like the U.S. where in spite of ourselves we keep growing. So, um, what else? What else is on my mind? Databricks and Snowflake, that continues to be the rivalry. I think a lot of data practitioners are talking about. I'm just, anecdotally, I'd love to see some numbers behind this, but I'm starting to see some people or hear some people talk about, moving from Snowflake to Databricks. I think, a few years ago this wouldn't have been the case, but with Databricks' lead, I would say, in AI ML, and now, I think improvements in their core offerings, around data lakehouse workloads and so forth, it makes it a lot more appealing to maybe move to something a bit more shinier and, perhaps more useful. I don't really have an opinion on Databricks or Snowflake one way or the other. I think they're both great products. Both, I think, serve slightly different use cases and slightly different types of people. But yeah, the scuttlebutt is, people are, I think, now favoring Databricks, which I find was interesting because that wasn't the case. Again, like a couple of years ago, it was all about Snowflake. But, the sea change in AI and ML becoming more front and center, it feels like Databricks just has a natural advantage because their tool is just better suited for it. So natively, right? I know that it's the same game and catch up. Basically, where Snowflake is great in data warehousing, Databricks is great in ML, data science workloads. You're going to play to each other's strengths, and the strengths right now, the center of gravity is not data warehousing; it's AI and ML. So at least that's where all the hype is. Finally, the big discussion was around Iceberg and sort of the future of that, and I don't know. I mean, I talked to people who are very into that whole scene of, open, table formats and so forth. And I really don't know. I don't think anyone does. I think there's speculation that, Delta and Iceberg are merged at some point. That'd be great. If they have two companies offering the same thing, or to have if Databricks has two offerings, basically the same sort of a thing, that might be a waste of engineering resources. But that's not my game. They bought Tabular for a reason. Databricks did, so we'll see what happens. But it does lead me to think that it leaves the option for another open table format like Hootie to really come in. And I think at least take up the slack where people might be a bit concerned about maybe a monopoly on the open table formats. Might be open source in name, but maybe not open source in spirit. So we'll see what happens. I don't think anyone really knows except for those at Databricks and who are working on the projects. I think the rest of it is all speculation at this point. So I can only say what I've been talking to people about and maybe my own experiences. But yeah, I think that it's a good time to be in data, good time to be in AI, good time to be in ML. There's a lot of excitement. At the same time, I think that we're dealing with the same problems as always. The underlying data is a mess. Let's get it cleaned up, however we do it. But yeah, same as ever. So it's basically the same thing, where as always, where it's the tools change, the vendors change, the practices change, but the problems always stay the same. So, but this is the industry we're in. This is the problems we've always faced. So let's figure out a way to deal with it instead of complaining about it. Anyway, I'm going to be off to the United States tomorrow for a very long flight. I'll be back for a few weeks, which would be nice to be back home. Yeah, just hang out with my family and dog, and just basically be a hermit like I always am when I'm in public, or back in the United States at least. Like I rarely go out. I rarely do anything. I like to sit home, just read books, not take calls with people, and just chill, decompress, because my schedule's nuts when I'm on the road. So anyway, looking forward to getting back home. If you're in Vegas next week for DBT's Coalesce, I'll be there speaking on October 9th at 4:15 p.m. I'm giving my talk on mixed model arts. It's been getting great acclaim so far. I've been tweaking the talk a bit. I feel like it keeps improving, so really excited to give that talk next week, and doing a few virtual conferences before I take off to Finland at the end of October. So anyway, I hope to catch you at least online. And I hope you have a great weekend. All right, take care. Bye.